Yes, thank you. It's a pleasure to be here and to be part of this discussion. I'm finding it a very exciting and inspiring discussion thus far. Just to tell you a little bit about the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, if you're not familiar with it. It works with governments. There are 34 member countries in the organization. And if you can think of a high priority policy issue that's confronting our governments, then you'll find a working group or a committee of countries that's dealing with that issue at an international level. So of course this includes health ministries and health policies. And so we're approaching this debate maybe from their perspective, from their point of view, which will make my contribution a little bit different. But I think there's a great deal of convergence in what's important and what the key issues are that we'll all be wanting to resolve together. So I'm in charge? Okay, great. So very briefly, this is one of the challenges that we know that our governments are facing as they support publicly funded dimensions of their healthcare system, which is that looking through the glass darkly, the kinds of models and whether those are coming from us at the OECD or they're coming from the European Union or they're national in scope, tend to give us the signal that there's pressure, upward pressure on health expenditures, and that upward pressure has a little bit of a contribution of aging populations. It's related to the strength of our economies overall. But then there's this big, we don't know what it is, driving force toward increasing health spending, which is often called technology. And it's kind of an accepted tradition in economics to label that, I don't know what it is, as technology. But the problem is we don't know what it is. It's all the other drivers of the pressures on the health system that we have not got the data to understand, frankly. So some of the things that we know is that, or that we suspect, is that as technologies are endorsed and supported and come out into the market, other older ways of addressing patient needs remain, and this mix of old and new technologies is part of the contribution to pressures on the health system financially. Expansion of use of technologies beyond their specific indications in their trials. But mostly I think we're just not doing a good enough job of gathering the data that we need to really understand value, which is what this conference is all about, approaching that from a different reason, but getting to the same place. So as we've been talking about today, our older approach in developing clinical trials in the traditional way that we've been thinking about them help us to answer the question, can it work? Can it work? But at the end of the day, what we really want to understand is about value. We want to understand if it works with complex patients in real-world situations, and we want to understand, as a practitioner, if it's the best choice for a particular patient that he or she is treating. And as we've been discussing today already, we'll really need to understand what's happening at the population level, and we need population level pathway data to do this. And there are countries that are leading the way when it comes to their national data availability and being able to harness value from that data and bringing that data. And what's key to this issue and this debate is that when we think about health data, there was mention of registries earlier. Registries are a great example of ways to follow patient populations that are well established. But at the end of the day, if you want to have a registry, then you will probably want to link data in some way, because health data traditionally is stored in silos. So you have an insurance database, you have a database from hospitalization data, you might have a pharmaceutical database. If you're lucky, you might have a primary healthcare database, and then you might have even patient-reported data somewhere else, stored separately. So the issue is that we need systems and governance and mechanisms to fairly be able to reprocess and reuse the data that we have about patients in an ethical manner. These countries are able to do these lovely things that are listed on this slide because they've worked those data governance issues out sufficiently. So what is the situation that we're facing in the OECD? Well, we've got lots of data in silos in all of our countries, but too few countries are able to develop pathway information with their data at the national level. And some of the examples that are given are very old examples, like the development of cancer registries that started before I was born. And so I'll just show you a little bit, because we've been investigating with countries, are they able to develop data from their electronic clinical record systems to explore patient pathways. And this is, I think, the rich source of data that this group would be interested in accessing in order to do follow-up of patient groups on a long-term basis. So we've been asking about intentions with respect to data systems. And when we're talking to countries about electronic clinical record systems, we're talking not about EMRs in a physician's office or a patient record in a hospital, but we're talking about engineering systems that allow patient data to develop that longitudinal care pathway. So there has to be contributions to that record from multiple healthcare providers and over time, and there has to be key elements within it, like information on drugs and diagnosis and tests, so on. So in terms of that kind of rich data and its capability to support countries in monitoring national healthcare quality, what we've got here at the top of this chart are countries that have already been making progress in this area, are already pulling in data from their electronic health record systems in order to support with high-level monitoring activities about the quality of healthcare. And then you've got a block of countries that want to move in this direction. These countries tend to have a national plan that's already in the public domain, where what we would call the secondary use or the reuse or extended uses of patient data from electronic clinical records are already on the radar and part of the intention. And just to let you know, we did ask a little bit more of these countries about what is the intended use of the data that would be extracted from their electronic clinical record system. And so I just wanted to share with you, because one of the issues, I mean, we asked about broad topics like public health monitoring, helping physicians make decisions in real time, monitoring the performance of the health system. So there we've got quite a number of countries. So out of the 15 European countries that participated in this study, we've got 9 of those 15 that want to make those kinds of uses with their data. But when it comes to facilitating and contributing data to clinical trials, that's the least on the radar of the health ministries right now. So we've only got in Europe 5 of 15 countries that have actually thought through, and this is in 2012, that particular use of the data coming out of their electronic health record system. So that would be very important. And outside of Europe, we had 10 non-European countries in this study, and similarly, there were only 5, so half of that group, that had put that kind of use of data onto their radar. So there's lots of reasons why this has been a thorny and difficult issue for governments to handle. And we could talk a lot about the importance of standardizing data, the importance of the interoperability of data, the importance of investment and resources in the development of data. But what we've come to understand is that right now, the most important challenge that we need to support countries in working through is really related to getting data governance right. And so we have a project right now where we're working with privacy regulators and privacy authorities in OECD countries and health authorities together to try to come up with a set of recommendations for OECD governments that allow the government to maximize the benefit of health data while reducing some of the risks that are perceived and need to be well managed. And in this case, these risks all revolve around managing the privacy of the data subjects who contributed the data to the study. So these are some of the things that we want to make sure that countries have some guidance to help to get right. Things like approvals for the use of data that are fair and transparent and clear and public and shared with the public, that the security measures are at the top of our understanding of what is the best practice, that we have a high standard for data processors that must be adhered to in our countries that allow safe access to data so that we all benefit from it. The legislative framework has to be gotten right to enable data sharing and use that is privacy respectful, but that can still happen. And as we've talked about earlier this morning, it's absolutely essential that our countries engage openly with patients, but with the population as a whole, about what we're doing, the benefits of what we're doing with data, and how we keep the data safe, and the risks.